You guys haven't missed much. I'm going to start the recording now. So there we go. So it should be recording now. Apologies on that. Thank you, Jane. So yeah, first thing you're going to do for the number game is you're going to define a function. And the function is going to handle playing the game for you. From there, we're going to print just kind of a basic introduction to the game. It's nothing too severe because you guys should know how to play the game at this point. But we're just going to have a quick introduction. From there, the game really starts going. The computer has to pick a random number. The computer will pick the random number, and that number will have to be between 1 and 100. From there, we have two situations. The user guesses, and what are the two outcomes of a guess? Does anyone want to take a hazard? What is branch A and what is branch B? I don't think anyone wants to take a guess. Well, the 0 and 1. It is binary, but Ashlyn's more correct. You're either correct or you're wrong. So here is correct, and here is wrong. So what happens? Let's pick the easiest one first. What happens if the user is correct? Well, the user wins. The game's over. That's pretty basic. What happens if the user is wrong, though? Well, here's where we have to actually start looking at logic, because bigger or smaller? Well, is n less than, I'm going to use variable g for guess. So, sorry, is the guess bigger than n? If the guess is bigger than n, we're going to print our high message. And if the guess is smaller than n, you're going to print your low message. And regardless of what happens, both of these will end up going back to the user guess. Apologies. A drawing tablet may not have been the best idea. So does this kind of make sense? It's pretty basic, but every path is covered here. Because if you're wrong, you're going to keep getting hints as to which direction you go, and you're going to keep guessing until you're correct. Now, one of the TAs, who is much more aesthetically inclined than I am, has designed this lovely little flowchart, which it very much did a better job than my drawing. So I'm gonna show this for a second so you guys can see that if you want. And then we're gonna go into the code since we're on a slight time limit. The code for this is really short though, as you guys will see. All right. So let's take a look at coding the numbers game. I've written the numbers game in mathematical notation, as well as like just a basic English statement. You guys will never see mathematical notation. If you guys are ever going to be shown anything, it's always going to be words, not this fancy gobbledygook, as my students last year always called it. So the numbers game, since we've identified all the pieces, and the Discord seems to be pretty accurate right now. People still trying to find tutorials. Oh no. So now that we have the pieces of the numbers game, what we're going to do is we're going to break it down. So step 1, introduction. Step 2, generate number. Step 3, user guess. Step 4, the loop. Apologies. I am going to quit Discord real quick because it is it's pretty accurate. And my computer won't even let me quit Teams. Don't you love Windows, guys? So, the game introduction, you're just going to have to bear with me on every time I stutter because someone went doo-doo in Discord. The introduction is just going to be a simple message of, welcome to the numbers game. It's a nice little print statement. Nothing's really happened at this point. However, if you were to run the function, if you guys see, I call the function, welcome to the numbers game. So the print statement's the first thing to run. From there, we need to generate some sort of random number. But the question is, how do we generate a random number? Well, luckily, Python has us covered for that. Python has a library that is simply called random. So I'm going to import random. And since I know a bit about random, however, if you guys don't know about random, what you could do is Python random integer in range. That's what we want. We want a random integer between 0 and 100. Click any of these sketchy websites, since they're probably not that sketchy. Rand range or rand int. Rand int is what we want, because what it will do, random integer from 0 to 9, from 10 to 100, stuff like that. So clearly rand int is what we want. Random.randint. I'm just going to copy it since I'm lazy. And I've got to pick a start and a stop. Well, my start and stop is 1 and 100. So 1, 100. Now we need to go through the user guess part. One thing I need to be explicitly clear on, because a lot of students lost marks for this. If you try and do something like this, guess equals input, what is your guess? If you do something like this on an assignment, where you use the input function, you will immediately and without hesitation fail that question. The assignment will never use the input function because there is no human to input the variables. In an assignment, we always have A, B, guess, stuff like that. Whatever has to be passed into a function is given to you here, which means the input function is to never be used. Another quick crime, if you guys were on an assignment and you had something like this, where you had guess, and you add a variable, let's say we call it D or whatever, that will also immediately fail. You guys can't add variables because all of the test cases are already generated. I have to be very explicit on that because a lot of people failed the first 2 assignments because of this. Like straight up failed. So I just want to make sure, just people let that sink in real quick before I move on, because it's pretty important. Anyways, so in this specific case, time to recheck my assignment. Yes, please do, because if you use input or you modified the parameters in any way, you have likely already failed. So now that we have a guess, we have to get to the loop part. Now, because this is a game, what we're going to be doing is going to be using a while loop. There's no data structure for us to use a for loop, and you guys just started that in lectures today, so I don't think you guys would be experts at using it yet. So while the guess, oh, someone has posted something on Teams. One moment. Someone's requesting access to the Teams. Let me just let them in real quick. Anyways, so we have multiple ways of doing this, as Nick said. Because I know if the guess is equal to my random number, the game is over and the person has won, I'm going to have my loop dependent on whether guess does not equal n. If we have to import something for the assignment, we'll be told to do so. For the most part, it's usually imported for you. That being said, very often we will not import something and just hint that there is a library to do it. And if we don't give you a hint, it will be obvious that the library is needed. So when we're dealing with random numbers, it's very obvious that you need something. Can you make the page a bit bigger? Yep, I can do that. It's very obvious that you guys need something to generate a random number. So in a question, we would not tell you that you need the random library, because all you have to do, Python random number. If you Google Python random number and you click on anything, I guarantee you import random right there. It's always going to come up. So I don't think something that obvious would be given to you. So let's take a look at our three scenarios again. If guess is bigger than n, print your guess is too high. Well, okay, let's do that. If guess is bigger than n, print your guess is too high. What is situation 2? If guess is smaller than n, then print your guess is too low. Well, okay. Luckily, I can just steal that, reverse the sign, and change one word to be the word low. If guess equals n, you can see my while loop would end. So all I have to do is print you win like that. And then game.ends is the same as saying, well, the game ends. That's the end of the function. However, this won't work. Not quite yet. And does anyone want to hazard a guess, hint, hint, as to why this won't work? I'll tell you, it has something to do with this while loop. What is the function of the purple exclamatory mark? The exclamation mark is another way of saying not. So when I wrote not guess equals n, it's the exact same as writing guess does not equal n. It is an operator. Anyways, does anyone want to guess what's wrong with this while loop? Because there is one statement missing right here. Something. Not exit. Exactly. The while loop is infinite. The input, so I get the user input out here, but the user can never re-guess. Remember that flowchart? We have to go back to the user guessing. So what I can do is I can just copy this line of code and put it here. If I go ahead and run this cell, then run the function. Whoops, I accidentally put guess. See, this will happen. Type error, number game, missing one argument. Whenever you guys mess with the function arguments like that, that's what happens. So be very careful. There we go. Welcome to the numbers game. Now the last part of this tutorial, because like that's all the coding. You guys have to beat the numbers game. So from here, you guys can type in a number, and I will immediately input it to the game, and we're going to see who guesses the winning number. And then with 50. Ooh. Ha! Okay, so 1 second, because I completely forgot something. It errored. Why did it error? Well, let's read that error message. Type error greater than not supported between string and int. Input is a string. So what we have to do is convert it to an integer, like so. Haha. Anyways. All right, 50 is too high. Someone give me a number. 25. We got 25. Jennifer, you win. Jennifer was the first person I saw who gave me 25, so hey. It keeps making another line when I try to run. When you are on the last line of a notebook and you run it, you will always get another line. This is completely unavoidable. This is how Jupyter does it, so that way you don't have to add on cells like this. If you want to delete a cell, you can. So if I add a cell like this and you want to delete it, make sure it's not green. Make sure you click on it and it's blue, and press D. If you press it really fast, that'll just delete the cell. Whoops. I clicked the wrong thing again. Someone's requested to join the team, so I'll let them in. So from here on out, the tutorial's officially finished. This was all Nick wanted to be covered, because the remainder of this tutorial is for you guys to ask questions. Any question you can imagine that isn't I coded this on the assignment and it's wrong. Why is that? So if you guys have a Python question, we answer that here. If you have an assignment question, we answer that in office hours. I just posted the schedule to the office hours channel for all of the TAs. My office hours are Wednesday. However, you are not required to have office hours with me. Nick does office hours Thursday mornings. He didn't say a time. Apologies. David does his on Fridays, and Sarthak does his on Tuesdays. All of the TAs are 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Here we go. Why do we need to put int before the input? That is a perfectly valid question. Input as a function is a return type, and I'm gonna use the symbol right arrow. Whoops. Apologies. I'm gonna use the symbol right arrow to say output. Input is a function. I'll go through string formatting after. Input is a function that returns a string. Now let me ask you, what happens when you do string less than int? Well, that's an error, because a string and an int can't be compared. Do you want to compare the value of the string, the length of the string? It doesn't know. It's not a mind reader. The computer isn't a mind reader. That's an error. However, I have another function at my disposal, the int function. And the int function will take anything in and always return an integer. So if I do the int of an input, even though input is of type string, int as a function forces it to be an integer. That's why we need to use the int function. So that way, these if statements will always work. One comment was it's for efficiency. That is technically correct, because I could do guess equals int guess. I can always do that, but it must be an int regardless. I could also do here, int guess, and here, int guess. I can always do stuff like that, but I need to make sure that I'm making the string an integer, so that way this condition, and this condition all work. I had another comment. Can we go through string formatting? I'm glad to go through string formatting. I like string formatting. String formatting is the act of having a variable and wanting to put it in a string. One of the most common reasons for this is, let's say a equals 5, whoops, A equals 5, B equals 7, C equals 10, D equals -6. And I want to do print A, B, C, D, but I also want to print variable, whoops, variable A is, and then print A, and then I want to print variable B is, and then I want to print B. Oh, but now I want them on different lines, and now I've got to do this, and it gets complicated real fast because you don't have control over what the variable looks like. String formatting is meant to help do stuff like that. It's meant to help debug. So if I want to print A is, B is, C is, and D is, what I can do is I can make a string. A is colon D. B is, whoops, B is colon D. And I'm going to explain the colon D part a bit later. C is colon D. D is colon D. And then you use dot format in order to format it. And if I run this, you can see how each of these templates here, 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 and here got replaced by the variables in order A, B, C, and D. What a string template generally looks like is a delimiter known as the curly braces in Python, a colon, which says it is of type. In most languages, that would be percent, but in Python it's colon, and then a letter representing the type. D means integer, percent, and then whatever number. F means that it is a float of this many decimal places. Percent S, that means string. T means truth or bool. And V is a generic value. The issue with the way Nick teaches it is basic stuff like this is, first of all, unreadable, because if I want to know what's going to come out here, I then have to look at dot format and see A. Second, I need to know the type. If A is some string like this, and I try to do that, D is not a string. That's not a proper format for a string. This is why I always teach you guys what is called an F string or a format string. Format strings allow you to remove this whole type crap and just put the name of the variable directly in the curly braces. Notice how Jupyter even recognizes this is a variable and highlights it a different color. Now, the type doesn't matter. This will always run. The disadvantage of this method is for floating points, you cannot specify how many decimals. If I want that to 6 decimal places, I have failed. I would then have to do dot format on this, or I would have to do actually this %5f dot format C. And even then, double quotation marks, I need to use single quotation marks because I can't put double and single quotation marks like that. It is a crapshoot. So if you're dealing with floating point numbers, bite the bullet, use dot format. If you're not doing floating type numbers, just use an F string. They are so much more convenient because they infer information on your behalf. See, Adnan? All right, Sandhya, does that answer your question on a bit more of format strings? When we need return, that's next. So even if A, B, C, D are integers, the formatting turns it into a string. Yes. So in the first case, when I was dealing with like %d means that the variable I am using is a decimal number. That's why it's a D for fun facts with Mark. So A, B, C, D. So no matter what, A, B, C, and D, because we know their type, it will go from that type to a string. The issue is you have to know their type. A is a string, so I need to say S. I need to tell Python that it's a string. C is a float. I need to tell Python that it's a float. And I need to tell it how many decimals I want. Do you see like the advantage of format and the disadvantage of format? It's very you know what's happening type mentality. ZU, you asked, yeah, you got it. Awesome. ZU asked, when do you need return? Because that's a good point. The function here doesn't return anything. Let me show you what happens though when I print number game. If I print it and just immediately lose the game, so I call a keyboard interrupt, which means that it doesn't work. Let me play a quick game of number game. Oh, hey. See how it prints none, ZU? The function returns nothing. There's nothing in the address of memory where you would expect an answer from a function. If your function calculates something and has to give that back to the code, you must return what is calculated. My favorite example, factorial. We're going to go into this a bit more. Factorial, if n equals 0 or n equals 1, return 1. Else we're going to return n times factorial to n minus 1. This is called recursion. That doesn't matter. The reason I'm returning 1 is if I print factorial of 5 and I run this, it returns 120. This value gets replaced by the number 120, and then print knows what to print. If I do not return, instead I say print 1, I've reached infinity. The kernel has died because nothing's returned. Similarly, if I print this, notice, again, this guy doesn't return anything. In the one case where it does return something, this will print 1, but this prints none, because this has no value, which means I can't do factorial 2 plus 3, because this has no value. It didn't return anything. Whenever you have calculated a value, no matter what it is, and the intent is to give it back to the code, you must return. So in our assignments, we ask you to calculate values in a function. Whatever the final answer you've calculated is, you must always return that back to the caller, essentially, because that's what gets graded. Our test cases are very much a if fact2 equals 2 type situation, or fact6 equals 5 situation, or does not equal 5, or something like that. Like, these would print true. But if I removed return for any reason, it would no longer work. One thing I also want to bring up. A lot of people have been asking questions about this. What is assert? Ooh. This is what everyone hates, because this is basically what grades you. Except, apologies, someone needed into the Teams chat. Assert is as follows. If fact2 equals 2, then do nothing. That's what assert does. Else, for any reason, if you get into this else block, violently scream. It's not that literal, but that's the best way I can put it. Because notice how nothing happens. Because both of these were true, assert does nothing. Notice what happens, though, when I have a false thing. Assertion error. This line of code is incorrect. This statement, fact 6 equals 5, is false. That's what assert does. To assert something means to state as fact. And if the fact you have stated is wrong, then you should get called out on it. That's what assert actually means in English. If I Google assert definition, to state or express positively, to defend or maintain, or to put action boldly, employ, or demonstrate. Assertions are statements of fact. And when this statement of fact is false, Python basically is saying, you are a liar, good sir. And this is how you're graded. Because if assert screams, we know that you've answered a test case incorrectly. We see this, and you have lost a grade. That is why everyone hates assert, because it literally controls what you get in this course. Sometimes you will see assert written as a function. It's also a function. Whoops, I should delete that and put it there. So this is the exact same statement, operates the exact same way. So that's another very big thing you guys will need for your assignment. How are you typing 2 lines at the same time? Welcome to a fun fact about Jupyter. Jupyter Notebook is actually a Python IDE, which means it can do funky things. On your keyboards, when you are on a line and you hold Alt, your cursor changes to a plus. Plus allows you to click and drag, and instead of doing this, which you guys are more used to, it will do this, which then allows you to type on all the lines. The Alt key is a lovely tool. Suppose you don't get an error from an assert. Does that mean your code is right? That means the statement of the assert is right. So notice fact 2 is 2, fact 6 is not 5. However, this code also does not error. So, Sandhya, let me ask you, is this the definition of factorial? Is this code right? I posit no. Although it has passed these 2 test cases, when we go to grade you and we do assert fact 3 equals 6, like this, you will have failed. So you have to very much choose your wording. Assert means this is right. Assert does not mean this is right. Jennifer Zhu, re-string formatting. Does the format automatically iterate through existing variables? For example, you use :D 4 times. It substituted A, B, C, and D in that order. If you want to repeat a variable throughout the same, yeah, okay, yes. So string formatting, if I have only A, I have not passed in enough arguments. You must always, always pass in the amount of substitutions that you want to make. So if I want to repeat it 4 times, I have to say A, and then because A is a string, S works, but D doesn't. If I turn A into the number 6, well, now S doesn't work because D does. And if I want to go %D, 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 %D and run it, I have now done the correct statement. It is very much this gets put here, this gets put here, this gets put here, and this gets put here. Someone has sent me a private chat. Well, it's 107, so sending me a how do I access the tutorial seems a bit late now. Apologies. I will message him back after tutorial. Right now, you guys still have me for 10 minutes because yeah, it's your time, not mine. So very much keep asking questions, guys. If you're confused, get known now. How many monitors do you have? Too many. I have monitor A, which is my coding monitor. I have monitor B, which is my laptop. I have monitor C, which is for my documentation monitor for when I'm working on a project. I have a TV monitor back there, and I have 5 more monitors downstairs in which my roommates and family all use. I have too many. I have very much too many. It's an unhealthy addiction. Do you play Warzone? I do not play Warzone. My gaming has been very lackluster recently. Is your TV connected to your computer? It is connected to a wireless receiver that is connected, or that my computer can access at any moment. So wirelessly, I can stream to my television. This is my game library. I do have many games, and I do have Warzone in my games, but I have never played a singular minute of Warzone. Is the police door behind you an actual door? No, that is a TARDIS. It is from a television show made in the European area by the BBC called Doctor. Doctor. I downloaded the entire series. Yes, I'm a pirate. So that's the TARDIS in the back. Can we go through linear search? Heck yeah, back to code. Linear search is one of the many searches we will teach you in this course. I saw 1 or 2 TAs playing Valorant during last weekend. I've seen a couple TAs playing Valorant, actually. It's apparently common. Anyways, linear search. I'll get to that. Keep asking questions, guys. I'm going to just keep knocking them off when I finish another. Linear search is the act of having a list of information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a list of numbers. Whoops. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And going through each number one by one. Do we need to comment? No, you do not. For someone who's never done coding, would you recommend as a good approach to not get confused? Practice, practice, practice. You will never learn to code if you do not challenge yourself. Always, like, hell, sign up for LeetCode. Do the easy problems. When you're done the easy problems, try some medium problems. Just practice. We cannot use input in our assignments and tests. That is correct. Doing so will automatically fail you. It's just the way we have done it. Because we use an automatic grader. He doesn't type everything in one by one. We give you what you get. Anyways, I keep getting sidetracked off of linear search. I'm going to ignore the chat for a moment because I want to go through linear search. Linear search is the act of start at 0. Is 0 equal to what I'm looking for? No. Start at 1. Is 1 equal to what I'm looking for? No. Start at 2. Is 2 equal to what I'm looking for? No. And let's say I'm looking for 3. Look at 3. Is 3 equal to what I'm looking for? Yes. Return that I have found 3. What is the meaning of the instruction return? If you guys want to know that, I have a tutorial recording page where I have actually very much described that exact problem. It's right at the end of that video. It's called What is a Function and How Do I Use It? It is also on my YouTube channel, which I can link after this tutorial. Your channel. What is a function and how do I use it? Whoops. Yeah. Making a flowchart, also very helpful. Anyways, so, I keep getting pulled off linear search. I'm very sorry. Linear search takes in some sort of list of items. So list of items and an element you want to look for in that list. Then you can, do you guys want to see me use a for loop for this or a while loop for this? I don't know how comfortable you are with either. I guess Sandhya has priority since this was his question. Full, please. Do you mean 4? For the game, I keep get input I is not defined. For loop, since we'll be using that more. Okay. So what I'm going to do is for item in list of items. So what this will do is it will take whatever this list is, and it will go this, 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 this automatically. So item is now going to be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. If item is equal to element, if it's equal to what I'm looking for, then I need to stop. I found it. Linear search has found the element. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to return item. Now, notice item is the actual item itself. What if I want the index of the item? Well, in a for loop, you can do that one of 2 ways. You can still, like a while loop, create an index and return I, and then do I plus equals 1. And then at the end here, I'm going to return -1 since I found nothing. However, then you're just doing a while loop. This is just a while loop. Regardless of whether you've used a for, that's a while loop. So I'm going to teach you guys to something that won't be helpful for you, but it does exist. There's a function in Python called enumerate. And what it does is it lets you do something like this for index and item. The index will be the position in the list where that item has occurred, and item is the actual value. So if I did 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and 5, 10 index would be 0, item would be 10. For 9, index would be 1, item would be 9. For 8, index would be 2, item would be 8. And the moment I find an item that matches what I'm looking for, I return the index of where I found it. So if I call linear search on my list ls, and I'm looking for the item 7, it's at 0, 1, 2, 3. So this should the number 3. And if I run it, boom. That's the concept of linear search. If you guys want to know what this looks like as a while loop, what you do is you do I equals 0 while I is less than the length of the list of items. What does return -1? It's a default. So let's say, real quick, I'm gonna comment this out. Real quick, what happens if I look for 4. 4 never appears on my list, so I return -1 to say it doesn't exist. You could also say that this is false, returns false. You could also say that this is none, returns none. This is your default when it doesn't exist. As I was coding before, for the while loop, if, I'm not typing this out a whole bunch of times, if list.items at I is equal to the element I'm looking for, return I plus equals 1. This is the exact same code. How is return giving outputs? Only print. No, print puts an output on the screen. Print makes them visible. Now, in the Jupyter Notebook, the last line of code, regardless of what it is, so if I write 4 and I run this, notice how I print 4 regardless. If I write 5, it prints 5 regardless. The last line, no matter what it is, unless it's an assignment, is always printed. So if I put x equals 5, nothing gets printed because there's nothing valid to print. That's why it looks like return is printing something. It's not. That is Jupyter. Jupyter is the one that's doing that. Real quick, before I sign off, someone said, for the game, I keep getting input is not defined. Did you spell input correctly? Because that's a function. Like that. I just want to be absolutely sure that. Also, how lucky is it that 50 was the guess? Yeah, it's not an actual output. Yeah. So Sankhya, print puts something on the screen, return takes the number and gives it back to the code. So when I write linear search like this runs the function. When it hits return, the number that it hits then gets put in the print block like that. So return replaces your function call with the value that it returned. So if I were doing, again, let's say I'm looking for 6, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ah, the answer is 4. Delete that and put 4. Then print says, oh, hey, you want me to put 4 on the screen? Cool, I'll put 4 on the screen. And it prints 4. That's the difference between return and print. I want to make sure I have no more questions. However, this is going to be the end of my recording. So everything said after this is not going to be recorded whatsoever. However, I'm not going anywhere.